If you coach speed, you should really learn how to see it, not just measure it, not just cue it, but to actually see it and understand it in real time under pressure at game speed. Because here's the thing, if you can't see it, it's really tough to fix it. So in this next few minutes, I'm gonna walk you through what I believe are the 3 foundational things that every coach should be able to see when they watch their athlete sprint, especially in acceleration. Then we'll talk about how that plugs into your training system, how to confirm what you see through testing, and how to turn that info into real coaching decisions. So let's start with the hips, because this is where so much speed potential either shows up or breaks down. So the first thing that I look at is hip extension. More specifically, can the athlete fully extend the hip? And this is where horizontal projection lives. We can't move forward without being able to extend our hip. So if your athlete can't finish a stride behind them, or they're getting pulled into early recovery before force is applied, they're leaving power, stride length, and momentum behind. And it's not always about raw strength. It could be a timing issue. It could be a coordination issue, mobility block, or in the case of return to or rehab athletes, it might be a pattern that's just been reinforced over time because of a compensation or because they've never really had to fully express that pattern. Coaches ask me all the time, so how do I know if I need to work on hip extension? So you'll see it with your athletes that reach with their foot instead of pushing through the hip. This is our step length bias. So instead of an athlete being able to push and create displacement or center of mass displacement or hips moving forward, they try to reach and create a longer step. You'll also see it in athletes who have a lot of trouble covering ground in early acceleration. It might look like they're not really getting the most out of each step. Then you'll see it in their splits in case you time their splits. So poor projection will usually show up in the form of slow 5 or 10 meter times relative to the max velocity. So I always start there because, like I said, if we can't extend our hip, we can't move forward. Next, I'm looking at the foot and ankle complex. When we talk about the foot and ankle complex, it's important to know and understand that we're talking about, yes, the foot and the ankle, but we're also talking about plantar fascia. We're talking about tendons, so Achilles tendon as well, all the ligaments, and then, of course, our calf complex. Foot is so important because this is our point of contact with the ground. And speed really comes down to how well we navigate and interact with the ground. But here's what I'm asking when I watch. Can they create stiffness on contact? Are they rolling cleanly through the foot, or is it collapsing? Is the ankle holding position or leaking energy? So if the foot collapses, we lose energy. If the foot contact is too soft or too complacent, then we might throw off our timing or our direction. If the ankle can't hold its position, then we start seeing leaks up the system throughout the chain. So when we talk about the system, we're talking about the ankle, the knee, and the hip. Stronger foot and ankle mechanics allow for cleaner contacts, faster transitions, more effective angles, and better force application overall. And this is especially important in early acceleration where our ground contacts are longer and that ankle stiffness and foot complex play such a huge role. Side note, if you have the technology available to gather kinematic variables, you can measure the ground contacts, and if it's slower than usual or you start seeing it dip, that can reflect some fatigue throughout the system. And the third thing that I'm looking at is orientation. And this is one that gets overlooked a lot. The orientation is all about where the athlete is directing their force. So you may have heard of vectors. So we have horizontal and vertical vectors, and at any given time, there's a combination of the two. But in acceleration, especially early acceleration, we want primarily horizontal vectors. We want to push forward. You'll see athletes who aren't able to orient themselves properly lose the battle already in the first 5 meters. So it really doesn't matter how strong somebody is in the gym, because if they're just popping straight up out of their sprint or losing their position, then they're not able to direct the force that they create in the right direction. So you see this a lot in younger athletes who maybe don't have a feel for the mechanics yet or don't understand how to use their body. Again, you might see it in athletes who are in a rehab phase or return to whatever it is, and they're just hesitant. They don't trust the tissues yet, and they're not used to doing that. Now, observation is just the starting point. So yes, it starts with your eyes, but to truly coach speed and make well-informed decisions, you need to be able to validate what you see with objective data. Here are some of the ways that I do that. So I do use force velocity profiling. I understand that this is a hot topic within our field. You just have to take it for what it is. It is theoretical, yes, but it also gives us some information that we can start to use to tell a story. So with force velocity profiling, I can see how much force we're able to produce and at what point throughout the sprint do we start to lose our position. We talked about orientation, right? And I can see through our decrease in ratio of forces how well we're able to direct ourselves forward. I love isometric strength tests, especially when we're looking at acceleration and early acceleration, because I want to see how much force somebody can produce at zero velocity, and isometric tests are perfect for that. If you have a force plate, you can test at the hip and the ankle so we know what tissues can actually produce or hold force. I also use mobility screens to see what joint positions we can access under load. These are things like hip extension, dorsiflexion, hip internal rotation, our split times, because the numbers will start to tell a story. If your 10-meter split doesn't reflect your strength, then something might be off. If you have the possibility to collect certain kinematic variables such as step length, contact time, flight time, this can also start to tell us the story of how we got from A to B. Now, here's the takeaway that I want every coach to walk away with. Speed development isn't a one-size-fits-all formula. It's a process of watching, testing, prescribing, progressing, and then rechecking. And that process works whether you're working with youth athletes, elite pros, or somebody coming back from injury. So some variables might differ based on where you are and what your current situation is. Technology available, time, other resources, manpower, how big your team is. What changes is how you individualize it. But what stays the same is our system and the process. See it clearly, test it properly, and train it intentionally. Once you know what you're looking for, you stop reacting and you start coaching with purpose. If this gave you value, if you're a coach who's deep in this work, trying to build better systems for your athletes and your teams, then reach out. DM me on Instagram or email me directly. At the end of the day, we're all working in the same direction with the same goal: help athletes run fast and stay healthy.